Comparison puts trust on something else.
Normally when I'm comparing something on a decision, it's what I think the other person's going to want.
They want, not what you want.
Or what they think is right.
The solution to comparison is a radical presence. It's hard to be growing if you're not present to what's happening.
And being present, the comparison doesn't even come to mind because I'm not even focused on it.
What's up and welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have a friend, a coaching client, and someone I really look up to. Leon Wright is joining the show today. And this episode is going to matter to you if you struggle with comparison or always being busy. There's so much value in what you're going to extract from this. And it takes a little while to get us under the armor that we all have when we're always busy, we're overanalyzing, and our mind won't shut off. Leon is a father. He's a husband living on a small farm in New Jersey. He's been sober for over 4.5 years, while continuing to improve not only himself, but those around him. Among many of the goals he has, freedom is one of them, and maybe one of yours as well. And that to him means the ability to work where he wants so he can be there for his two sons, and loving wife whenever they need. He loves to travel, help others, donate his time to coaching his son's sports teams, and a lot of other things. He's an adventurer at heart, and I really appreciate Leon. He's here on the show today, and thanks to the Go Abundance community and being active in AA, he continues to expand his life and create a legacy that his family never had. And I am here to tell you that you're going to get a lot out of this conversation. This is a coaching call. Leon is a great example of what it means to stand in your truth, to be confronting of who you are so you can make change. And I know you're going to get a lot out of this. Here we go. All right, squad, we got Leon right here. Leon and I have actually had multiple interactions over the course of probably 3 years, but it's been really special in the last 3.5, 4 months in particular to get to know Leon at a much deeper level. I've been lucky enough to step in and help, support, grow, nurture, and guide him on his journey. I'm lucky enough to be called coach by him once in a while. Leon, you've been a part of our program that stemmed from Emerge and Go Abundance. Let's just talk about where you've been in the last 3 months, because you've gone and undergone a lot of change. And today we'll focus on where we can accelerate that. But let's just own your gain. It's easy to stay in the gap, say, hey, I got a whole lot more change to do. But let's just talk about where you've grown.
Yeah, I mean, just the last year alone, and even the last, like you said, the last 3 to 4 months. I know we talked a few years ago, and like the biggest thing that I'm starting to grow into is the ability to trust my decisions and trust myself and what decisions I'm making for myself. Not necessarily based on what other people may be suggesting that sound good, but just don't fit who I am. And that's a lot of what I struggled with last year, leading up to our coaching.
Yeah, I can remember our early conversation, and my lens on the outside is certainly special because we get to spend a lot of time together. But part of what I get to see is as you trust yourself, you get evidence that you can. So what are some things that you're starting to see now historically from the last 3 months when it comes to trusting yourself? What are some things that you've done that you might not have in the past that represent that trust of self?
I think things are just starting to feel easier. Like they feel lighter. So, an example is, in looking at this business acquisition part of things, and going to events over the last, I went to an event a month ago. It was a holiday event in Philly, and it just was easier to talk about. One, because I know the industry, which is good, but it's really just something like I'm realizing like this is what I've really been wanting. And it's kind of like it's come in and out. But that's been like the biggest hurdle. It's just like this feels so much easier to talk about than trying to force something else that I was also learning.
I love that. What I'm hearing, because I know the context, is that the conversation about your goal, which is to acquire a business, is becoming easier to talk about. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're tuned in, what you may hear is details about the goal. What has been really exciting, Leon, is that you've gone from working and trying to identify the goal to now working. You're still W-2'd, yes?
Yes.
Still W-2'd, and now you're clear on where you want to go.
Yeah.
how are you seeing the bridge now? Because that, I think in the past was, I have to completely abandon one and completely go 150 miles an hour into the next. And we've worked through how to build the pathway. What does the pathway ahead look for you?
So right now, the initial steps are just kind of being able to identify and understand the business metrics, right? So I've done this already with multifamily. I understand how to evaluate multifamily. I know how to cultivate broker relationships. My next step is now, all right, how do I evaluate business, and is it right for me? So that's really my next step. And then it's deciding whether it's going to be an investment from myself, through the funds that I have available, or family and friends. I also have some other avenues lined up, thanks to, through GoBundance, with a guy that I met last year that is interested in purchasing a business but not running it. And I'm on kind of the opposite. Well, I'm still interested in purchasing it, but I'm interested in running it. So I have that avenue. So I have a few avenues that I'm exploring there, and then it's just, putting my head down and saying, here's something I found out. Talk to brokers, start to get some deals in, and really defining that buy box and what my percentages are. So when I talk to the broker, it's not like, yeah, I'm looking for this, but I'm not really sure what my top end is.
Right. Yeah. You've got a bit of sophistication, a bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
And as I've gotten to hear more and more about this, and we've worked on the fears and things that come up with it, I also know that there's a certain point where no matter how much information you have, it's still going to be scary. That's changed a lot for you, in my opinion. Just again, kind of based on the relationship that we have and seeing it. What would old Leon have done at the junction where you have the right information, which you may not yet, but now going into it, you have a totally different lens as to the information you need and the choice you have. What's starting to float through your mind when it comes to that?
Probably self-doubt, comfortability within the job that I'm in. Because it is a big comfort factor where I'm at.
Sure.
I get the freedom to do what I'm doing, but like I said, I've got to the part where I love the industry, but I don't like the capacity that I'm in, if that makes sense. So that's what I'm saying, looking towards the next step. But I probably would have stopped. Honestly, I would have stopped and then went to something else, or went back to multifamily, or back to short-term rentals, or something else. Because that's what I did last year. I did it 3 different times. The good thing is this is how I learn is that I've started to take things out that I don't like, and it's clearing up the picture of what I do like.
Magic. Yeah, it's very fitting for our conversation today. How are you also making sure that this pathway to business is not just simply and purely for the money, but it also helps you live into what matters most to you?
Yeah, I mean, I have a natural enjoyment out of leading people, and just kind of growing people. So that, I mean, I can do that to an extent where I'm at, but I'm very limited as to the amount of interactions I have with direct people. So just keeping that in the forefront of my mind is keeping me moving forward.
Beautiful. Where do you find yourself stuck lately? Where do you find, or maybe not stuck, but also where there's overthinking, or where there's like these big jumps that you feel you got to make rather than baby steps?
Yeah, it usually comes down to starting the next new step.
Okay.
Just over the holidays, I was sick. I feel like I fell behind on my coaching, in talking with everybody, I was like, yeah, you may be a little behind, but you're still getting done. So, and then it's just picking back up and taking that next small step. That's usually where I struggle the most, is getting restarted. Because I feel like I have to make up so much time. And then, being able to think and talk to guys and my wife about like, hey, this plans for, this first step is a 1-year goal. Right? It's been a 2-year goal, but I spent, 9 months not doing the goal that I set out for. And in reality, it's a 12-year goal for me. So that's a long time.
Nice.
So that helps just kind of ease the burden. And I look back, just over the last 3 months, of how much further I am now, versus where I was. That's what gets me over those steps. Is when I look back and when I take notes to myself and I start typing everything out, or I go back to update my goals or whatever it is, that's when I really see the progress, and it just refuels me. But I don't do it enough. And it's something that I struggle with. And it's just, with everything going on, I tend to get worn out despite how much energy it may give me.
I love that you stretched the timeline, and that's really helped you.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that helped me a lot in my journey was going from a 5-year goal to a 10-year goal takes a whole lot of pressure off. But also remembering that as an entrepreneur, it's an infinite game. You play this for the rest of your life, ideally. Even if you sell, you just buy a new one and change. I hear two things in the way that you describe that. And I'm curious to know if these are creating friction as you're building and thinking and dreaming and planning. I feel behind and I need to make up time. Are those regular friction points?
It's the biggest friction point in everything that I do.
Okay.
Not just the business aspect. It's kids, it's work, it's little tasks at home.
Great.
So,
I say great simply because we found. Okay, so let's spend our time here. Let's identify maybe 3 key examples, like core examples of how you feel behind. So give me just one. We'll start with one and see if we can find the pattern in where you feel behind. So let's start with, you mentioned business, kids. Those are 2 great places. And if there's a third, we'll find a third.
Yeah, I mean, even just like I said, with the coaching program, right? So I felt like I fell behind when I got sick. I got the flu, so I was out for pretty much a week, pretty much in bed for a week. And I didn't get my end of year reflection done. And it was the time, of course, I was off work. So it was like the perfect time I had to do it. And, maybe God had other plans for me. So he told me to rest and now, but then I got to a point where I got better, not before the next call, but by the time we had our call last week, I had time to do it and I didn't do it. I don't know if it's because I just didn't understand what was supposed to be done, but I just, for whatever reason, didn't get back to it. And I just built it up in my head.
Great identification of what's going on. Let's find another example. What's happening with kids? Where do you use the language, I feel behind?
I think it's a very similar thing. Well, sometimes we'll get to like the end of the week and I feel like I haven't spent time with it. And then I feel like I got to spend like all day Saturday with them just to make up for it. And then this is just me because the way I get to the end of the week, I don't look back as to what we've done. I have more recently tried to identify things that my kids and I both enjoy. And we have been spending a lot more time together outside of, I do help coach their, my older son's soccer, team. So I help that. And then my younger son is now going into baseball. So I'm going to help with that as well. I also take them to karate. So there's that aspect and trying not to feel like I'm taking so much time away from them when I'm doing all this other business stuff as well. So it's more of a feeling of, I feel like I'm taking time away from them in order to try and get time with them. So it's a very hard internal battle.
This is great. Keep digging, man. You're doing great. So there's an internal battle there. I got to spend all day with them to make up for it. So I hear that pattern again. And if you feel like you're taking away while you're gaining, it's going to feel like you're going nowhere. Great. Let's see if we can find a third example. Kids, coaching program, what else? Where else do you feel behind?
Probably the house. That's the other big thing. I mean, my wife kind of goes hand in hand with the kids. It's the similar journey. But we undertook a pretty extensive project at the house. So it's that feeling of overwhelm with everything that happens. And then, it rains and my basement gets flooded. And now I have to take care of that. So everything else goes by the wayside. So when it's a necessity, I basically drop everything that I'm doing and I get it done. But when it's something that's little, like I have probably like 30 outlets to change out. And there's only like 4 or 5 in each room, but I have to do them all. So that's something where I struggle with. And then it's just like, I just don't do anything for a while. And then I go back into it and I get things done for 3 months and then I don't do it again for a little while.
Nice. So there's an event that creates pressure and then you'll focus in and knock a whole bunch out, but at the expense of the other pursuits that you're currently in.
Yeah.
So it's all or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Great. This is amazing. Okay. And I got a lot of love for you, so I mean that in the nicest way. We have a pattern here, and I want to use 2 examples to kind of work through that with you, and to give you a couple concrete things that you can begin to pay attention to in action. We'll be chatting in just a few days for our coaching call, but I still want you to have outside of that coaching call a little bit of one-on-one. I see two things. The first is that almost everything that you've mentioned is very binary. It's either or, it's going great or I'm totally behind, which in a moment isn't necessarily the heaviest, hardest thing to wrap your mind around. But when you start to stack up binary, now a win in one area creates a loss in another area. And all of a sudden there's tension because you got to sacrifice an A to get a B. And you got to sacrifice a B to get a C, or a C to get an A. So always in the binary fashion, especially in multiple categories, there's going to be a large cost consequence to any choice. That pattern starts to sweep really hard. Cost consequence being, okay, I have to pay to make this choice. And when the choices are something really important, like your personal growth, coaching program, family, or the project you've undertaken at the house, loss in two of those categories are probably going to overshadow the other if we're just using three. If there are more categories, then certainly picking one is going to feel like a negative in the other five.
Yeah.
So think of that like a seesaw. And you've got one task, one mission on one end of the seesaw, and every other task goes on the other end of the seesaw. Of course, the one with all the tasks is going to feel way heavier than the task that you actually did. All right. It's a recipe for shame, for not enough, for not worthy. It's like just massive recipe for, see, I'm not doing it right, because you've got a family of activities that you're not doing compared to one activity that you've done. Does that feel what you're feeling?
Yeah.
Okay. The second pattern I see is that there's the internal battle ultimately is, now that I'm choosing this one and there's a cost, there's a hole. I've dug a hole. I'm in debt. And what I hear in the way you talk about this is that there's debt. You're not freely making the choices out of what you want. It's, I've got to recover. Just like a credit card, every month there's interest. It doesn't matter if you pay off some of it or none of it. The interest is always ticking. So as the clock goes, it probably is racking up your debt. And you may find a reset, like a rest. And if you even use the reset and the rest, the debt is still ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Is that an accurate depiction of what you're feeling? Are you feeling trapped in debt?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I struggle with.
Let's figure out where the debt comes from. So if you've got kids where you cannot be in the same place at the same time, you can't be everywhere at once. That's just the reality of things. If there's a resistance to that reality, there's a natural inclination to say, there's a problem. In some ways, I get that there's, like, I can't be in all places at once, so there's a problem. But in other ways, what do you think your kids need from you so that we can start to really uncoil why you feel like there's debt?
So to be honest, I always feel like I'm not providing enough activity for them. For like, getting out to do stuff and like exploring stuff. Like, and a lot of the times that we do stuff, it's in the house, which I don't even like. I do like certain things, but I like being outside, but for whatever reason, I don't know why. I just don't do it.
Okay. So just listen to that language. I want to repeat this. I'm not providing enough learning, enough activity, et cetera, right? It's still debt. I'm not providing enough. And the challenge that I think is going to make its way to the surface here is that there is no quantity that can fill a hole that is largely based on a debt that can never be repaid because it doesn't exist on the other side of the equation. Your kids probably don't feel that you have debt. I would doubt it. That's not to say they don't want more, but I don't think that they're holding grudges against you not being there. And in an important fashion, if we even look at your personal development, there is no debt for personal development. And I think that's a really important narrative for those of you listening. It's very easy to make personal development a debt recovery system, not a growth system. And it's a slight skew But it is very important. If we go into personal development, we're like, see, I'm not who I should be. See, I'm not who I can be. See, I'm not acting like I'm my best. Now we're indebted to the growth that we have. We're not actually growing. We're just recovering. And that's a totally different mindset. The growth mindset is largely organized around how can I get better? How can I improve? How can I slowly iterate? And how can I slowly, by way of like baby steps, improve what I'm already doing? So that improve, iterate function only can exist in growth, because if it has with it attached debt, it's going to feel like I'm not improving and I'm not iterating. I'm catching up.
Yeah, I'd be honest, Aaron, like that, I came into this coaching program with that exact mindset. And I believe we talked about it on the first call. Like my first thing was like, I got to figure out Leon. And after the first call, I realized I'm going to be figuring out Leon for the next 50 to 60 years, pretty good. You know what I mean? I'm like, and it just took that weight off, and it completely changed my focus and completely changed how I showed up to the group.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that conversation. So then let's figure out where this debt comes from, because there's still debt here on the board. And as long as there's debt on the board, you can't climb out and enjoy what you're doing. While I think all of these things come from a place of love and passion for what you want to pursue, the organized system that they live in is riddled with debt. So we need to figure out how to extract the lack that's driving these things to the love that's driving these things, and try to separate and segregate the two. If we exist in a place of I'm growing because I should, we're in lack. And I'd say most of my 20s was this. I should be better. I could be better. Go, go, go. Versus I want to be better. I'm excited to grow. I'm excited to learn. And I'm on my own terms. So that's an important part of this as we go. We want this on your own terms. Let's look at the house. The story you mentioned at the house was great. It rained. The basement flooded. Now everything has to go to that. How often are you experiencing moments where you are essentially going to Band-Aid a situation, and it takes all of your focus, and then you have to go to the next Band-Aid and the next Band-Aid and the next Band-Aid?
Not very often. Twice. Okay. I think it's happened. The basement happened twice. The first time it wasn't as bad. And then, yeah, not, I mean, in 2.5 years that we've lived there, it's maybe been 3 times that I've had to do something.
Great. So there's not a lot of examples of like absolute emergencies that require you to give up your focus.
Yeah.
Great. If that's true, then what we're trying to identify is why the switching costs is so high for all of these different categories, and why you can't make progress in all of them versus acknowledge the debt in all of them. So you want to be better in each of these categories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What happens if you're not better?
I think in the moment, it doesn't affect me until something comes up or I'm talking to somebody else. It's where a lot of time I spent last year comparing.
Yep.
And I did that. I'm in recovery, so I've done the same thing through that. I tried in the beginning to tell you, don't compare, just relate. So it's taking the focus off of the comparison of where I feel like I should be based on what I think somebody else has.
Great. Is that comparison helping you?
No, never.
No. Is good. We're on the same page there. Is there any chance that the comparison you're making is what's putting you into debt?
Probably.
Tell me more.
So a lot of times is that's it takes me and kind of knocks me. It feels like it knocks me down. It makes me feel less than, right? So again, I should be further, right? I should be. I don't know why I should be, but that's what I say sometimes. It's always I should be doing more. Should be doing more, even though I know when I do too much, that's usually when I get sick, and then I can't do anything.
Yeah, this as more information comes out, what I'm hearing is that you've got an ideal, some kind of standard that you imagine in the future. And that ideal is so disconnected from today that the distance is what's being measured.
Yeah.
And if I'm not close to my ideal, then I'm failing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was I was probably 25 years old. I had started coaching athletes. My team was probably 12 or maybe 11 years old, like really young. And there was a platform that came out called Got Soccer. So my girls team, really, really young, now had a metric system for where we were in the state, in the region, and in the country. I think it was one of the worst things to come across in youth sports. Got Soccer logged your tournament performance. It logged your league games. It monitored all of it. Prior to Got Soccer having a presence that was big enough where every team was on it, I didn't have to worry about comparison. I didn't have to worry about like, well, this team's ranked 7th and we're ranked 9th, so we need to beat them. They were just another team.
Mm.
There also wasn't this information going out to the parents and therefore to the kids about how the other team played without any information. And it was interesting to see what stories were being told. It's fitting that you're coaching your boys. The thing that would happen is, let's say we were ranked 6th and we were playing the second place team. Well, all of a sudden, there was like a scouting report based on them being ranked number 2. There was a story about where these players were versus our players. Oh, they must be really good at passing, or they have all these goals, or what have you. They got a stud, who knows? But the problem with that was not that there was a ranking system. It was the prioritization of the ranking system. The comparison held too much value.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that these comparisons have such a like magnitude in your world that they carry more weight than progress. Now, I want to say this to you to just see how you feel about it. So just take a deep breath and let's explore the feeling of this. It sounds to me like you value comparison more than growth.
That's it. It's fair.
Okay. What is the cost of comparison? What do you have to pay in to regularly compare yourself?
It's a lot of mental stress.
Okay. So the cost is stress. What else?
Fatigue.
Okay.
Slows me down.
Definitely does.
It overall just doesn't make me feel good.
Perfect. Probably the same things that you would be concerned about your kids experiencing rather than just enjoying a Saturday game, a Sunday game. Right?
Mm.
I'm tired. I'm constantly in a negative space, et cetera, et cetera. Let's look at the cost of growth. What's the cost of growth?
I'm not sure I know how to answer that.
And therein lies the opportunity. The cost of comparison is really high, but there's not really much upside. What's the upside of comparison?
A lot of negative.
Okay.
There's no upside.
Like very, very little. I could see how you might be able to say, well, now I have a model to copy. To me, that's the only possible upside of comparison. I have a model that I can copy. But that isn't necessarily equivalent to the cost. The cost is I'm unhappy, I'm fatigued, I'm constantly giving myself a bunch of hardship, and I'm putting myself in a position where mentally I'm not able to stay focused on what matters because I'm constantly having to look up.
Mm.
Compared to the only upside being, well, I have a model to copy. Let's look at growth. Part of what may be undefined is the cost of growth. The cost of growth is focus, clarity. Like you're going to have to find time to focus. You're going to have to find time to develop clarity. The way we define clarity, as you know, is the removal of undesirable options. So you're going to have to cut some stuff, have to say no to things. Those can be uncomfortable costs. Well, let's list out the upside of growth. What's the upside of growth?
Happiness.
Nice.
Freedom.
Yep.
Joy.
Joy. Magic.
Feeling. It would be a feeling of less resistance.
Less resistance. Great. Now let's get tactile. What are some things you want to experience from growth? More income, more time. Let's get into the granules a little bit.
Yeah, income's one of them. the ability to lead others,
Great. Love that.
ability to be able to control my own schedule, which also scares me. You know, like I get to see my wife do it. So, she can work from wherever we're at, even if not that we want to work on vacation, but she can choose to work 5 months out of the year or 7 months out of the year and take the rest off. I can't. I have to ask for time off. So I get to, control that. I don't have to worry about taking time off for my kids, going to see their school plays or whatever it is, and having to worry about time.
So I hear that there's a fear about the responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that, right? Like, hey, it scares me that I have to manage my own schedule, but that's just responsibility, which I know you can handle.
I can take my health into better control as well. Because right now it's, by the time I get home, I'm mentally fatigued, and I'm not to say that I won't be, but the drives every day. I drive to an office to sit in an office doing what I can do at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Many Americans do.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a lot of opportunity and growth then. So I want you to think about a scale, right? The seesaw. The seesaw that has been is there are 7 things that I'm not doing, and there's 1 thing that I am doing, which lopsides this to create a focal point on the cost, the pain, on the things that I'm not doing. When we look at comparison or we look at growth, we have a lot of different pains, a lot of different costs associated with that. And if we look at the upside of growth clearly has a landslide victory over the upside of comparison. So I think on paper, it's easy to say, all right, growth has a much more positive role in your world than comparison, which we probably knew at the onset.
Yeah.
But I think it's important just to document that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in this, there's a belief around growth. There's a belief around expanding you that is fundamental to why it hasn't been chosen and comparison has. I want to go back to this very simple phrase, trusting myself and trusting my decision. Comparison puts trust on something else. What does comparison put trust in?
I don't know, man. Normally when I'm comparing something on a decision, it's what I think the other person's going to want.
Interesting. They want, not what you want.
Or what they think is right.
So a tremendous displacement of trust of self.
Yeah.
Comparison is rooted in mistrust. And if the first thing that comes to mind is, well, this is what they would want, or this is what they would do, you've essentially said to you, I don't trust me. Now let's look at growth. Why not pursue growth?
I don't know why I wouldn't. I've tried to grow in every aspect that I can, but I don't know.
It's ultimately the same core issue, right? I don't trust me to grow. The core of trusting ourselves is largely based on, do we have enough evidence that says that we can? Where's the evidence that says that you can't trust yourself?
I would think that for me, it stems from my alcoholism. And that's a big part of, like I said, I did it for so long.
Okay.
And it's part of what I shared in stories is, I spent a long time, being around the negative. It was, I would say let's say I'm 38. So let's say I spent 33 years around the negative. Some discount some of the childhood. So give it, call it 23. And I've spent 2.5 years in the positive. It's a big overcoming. And I've come a long way when I look back at everything.
Does that story serve you? Because what you're essentially saying is that 2 years of growth is not enough to make up for 23 years of improper decision making.
Yeah, there's a lot of regret in that.
And that I understand. That much we may not be able to wash away today.
Yeah.
But I want you to think about the debt function that we're really talking about. You've got 23 against 2, which by mathematical standards of your comparison would mean you have 18 to 21 years before you're ever free. And is that where you want to be stuck?
No.
So we can't use years as the defining metric of your am I stacking evidence equation. What can we use if we can't use years?
To me, it would just be the history of what I've done recently and just kind of, continuing to reflect.
Okay. Tell me about your history, your last 2 years of history. How have you grown in the last 2 years?
Oh,
Go back to let's see, it's 2024 for 4.
it was summer of 21.
Okay.
Yeah, just my communication and ability to, like, I've even seen it in this job. So just in my communication ability, being able to trust decisions that I'm making, communication with my family, the steps I've taken, the network that I've put myself around. It's just, the opportunities are endless as long as I'm willing to continue to keep going. And I am, which I wasn't before. I had gotten, to about 2.5 years ago, I had gotten, I would say, stuck. Right. And then that's when I joined a mindset group, and it's led me to here. And I don't know. I enjoy it. I love it. I would hate to be out of it. I'm just going to keep growing. That's all.
It's interesting to hear you talk about it that way.
So that's this thing, is when I reflect on things, it changes. And when I don't, which I tend not to do as often for whatever reason, even though just like working out, I know working out makes me feel better, but I don't always do it. So there's something that just hasn't switched yet, but it's getting better. It's the little steps that I'm starting to build around with the coaching program, right? So being able to consistently see those little actions, making up time, as opposed to what my mind thinks needs to be perfect in order to execute.
Back in binary.
Yeah. I'm a very analytical, logical type mind. And it's a part of it's what I was trained to do.
For sure. And being analytical is different than being black or white. Right? Being analytical is looking for options that still work and still ultimately solve for whatever equation you're working towards. It's interesting though that, the way that I hear you talk about experiences where you do go to the gym, you do make a choice that aligns with who you want to become. It almost sounds to me like you see it as an accident. Like, oh man, I went to the gym today. Like, this is a rare treat. Is that generally how you talk to yourself? Like, I like this, but
no, I wouldn't say it's an accident. More so as I don't know, if I'm not reflecting, like I said, if I'm not reflecting on it and realizing like what it's doing for me, and then continuing to realize like what it's going to do for me, it's like small little steps. I don't know. That's a interesting question.
Well, what to me is interesting is that if you know that reflection is the key, why is that not the process?
Yeah, it's a good question.
It's the question.
Yeah.
There's something about the trust of self that is very interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And we build trust of self forward. In your case, what I'm hearing though is that if we look at all these different projects, the only thing consistent about them is that they're forward looking in their intention, but there's no backwards reference to qualify whether you're actually making growth happen. Mm-hmm. Which essentially means it's stuck in comparison. It almost is like the choices are made with comparison at the root, but they become growth when you look backwards.
Yes.
It's a new filter when you look at it in hindsight and say, oh, wow, I actually am growing.
Yeah. And that's what's really helped me out. Like I said, with your coaching, it forces me to get used to looking back frequently.
Sure.
So a big change that I made and when we were going through things is I was starting to journal everything out in a book. But for me, when that book gets closed, it tends to just completely escape my mind. Like unless I open it up and turn back the page. Mm-hmm. So what I started doing was working basically in a Word file, and I just continually updating it. So it's putting everything front and center. Every time I go in to look at it, it's forcing me to go back. Yeah. And it's just, that's the way I work so much better that way. And just keeping things front and center. So
there are 2 possible roads forward for someone like you. Actually, I'll give you 3 because I think it's important not to be in binary. So I want to give you 3. One is that we build a list of things to pay attention to and reflect on daily. 3 categories, 3 ideas, 5 different distilled thoughts, whatever it may be. But that becomes your process. They need to originate from who you are and who you want to be, not from anybody else, because that's the comparison piece, right? Mm-hmm. What is everybody else reflecting on? And what I heard in what you just shared was, when I do it my way, it works.
Yeah.
How often do you do things your way?
A lot more often at work than in my personal life.
Cool. So there's room to grow there in your personal life. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm going to do things my way. So one would be, can we come up with a list of things that allows you to say, this is what I'm reflecting on each morning? If that's family, if that's house, if that's kids, if that's wife, if that's fitness, some of the things you've mentioned through passing today that are important to you, then those are the 5 categories to reflect on. That's it. You don't need to go expanding beyond that. The second thing that comes up as a possible road forward is to really look at what you're saying no to actively or passively. What I sense is that there's a lot of soft yeses happening as you go through your day-to-day or your personal weekend time, your evening time, that are getting yeses that might not be conscious yet, which could be creating the trust breaches. Even if it's something like what you eat or what you cook or what you're doing for an hour when you're in the car, can start to strengthen if you can begin to make them conscious choices, conscious yeses, conscious nos, versus anything subconscious. You can probably start to see a new trend, and then you can change it. So everything is just in that choice, in that little tiny moment that is that choice. It's impossible to change something you're not aware of. And what I hear in the way that you talk, even about the comparative nature that you have, is that the default is to go to comparison versus growth, which means we've got to create a little tiny gap that says, okay, let me set down this comparative. Let me do it my way. And then I can move forward. What that might look like for you is leaning onto the words reactive or responsive. How can I be less reactive, more responsive? Reactive, now. Responsive, pause. Just a little pause before you make a choice. The third thing that comes up, because this seesaw is so stacked with things you're not doing while you're doing the things that you are doing, which is inevitably like a function of struggling with presence, is to focus, or let me not use that word because that can be ambiguous, to remind yourself that the purpose of expansion and growth and personal development is to be more present. It's not to say there are 7 things on the other side of the seesaw. It's to say, I'm here with the one that is here. When you're on a coaching call, be on the coaching call. When you're at work, be at work. When you're at home, be at home. There's nothing more dissatisfactory than being in 2 places at once where you get 0 credit for both.
Yeah.
So that has helped me a lot, where I'm in multiple places, conversations with multiple people. I have conversations for a living. So if I'm not present to this conversation and I'm thinking about someone else's conversation that's coming up next, I'm not present for you, and I'm not in that future planning either. I'm nowhere. I'm lost. Those 3 principles might have a lot to help you with this journey, and might give you a little bit of freedom to start wiggling a little space in between your choices. That's all you need, is a little bit of space. And I want you to think of it this way. If the comparison is so loud that when you're doing anything, you're thinking about something else, if the comparison is so noisy that you're looking at, I made these mistakes for 23 years and I've only done this for 2, or the comparison is so loud that there's constantly a person that you aspire to be like, but you feel distant from, you're just not present. And the solution to comparison is a radical presence, because in presence is growth. It's hard to be growing if you're not present to what's happening.
Yeah, and I can tell you that in being present, the comparison doesn't even come to mind because I'm not even focused on it.
So you have a solution. What are some of the things that stop you from being present?
I think it's just keeping that front and center, a reminder of some sort to say, hey, just like the 3 things you identified are 3 things that I struggle with, probably the most.
Yep.
Reacting versus being responsive. Saying no to things that I probably should say no to. And presence. I struggle with attention.
Let me requalify that sentence, because there might be a window here that we can squeak through. Struggle with attention. Nobody struggles with attention, because attention is like a laser beam. It just goes wherever your eyes go. So if you don't struggle with attention, what do you struggle with?
Distractions.
Nice. I like that. Let's look for the shadow part of this. If distractions are the pull that keep you moving, what's the fear of?
I'd say maybe it's kind of like a fear of like I won't get there in my timeline.
Okay. I like that.
But
that's part of what the distraction does.
Yeah.
I'll say it. I want you to just feel it, because this might get really deep really fast. If attention feels like, I'm not good at it, it's just that we're really good at distractions because there's a fear of stillness.
Yeah.
What happens when you're still?
You don't grow.
No. What happens when you are still?
I don't grow.
Where do you go? Where do you go in your head?
I go in my head. Sometimes it's absolutely nowhere. Like sometimes it's just sitting still, but my mind starts to then go into comparison and what other people are doing.
Okay. So we've found the culprit. It's not distraction. It's not all the things. It's probably not even comparison. Those are results of an unhealthy relationship with stillness. So now we can build a practice of stillness. If you can be still, then you can hone where your attention goes. And if comparison is coming up to dodge stillness, it is a defense mechanism, not a strategy.
Yeah.
Where does the fear go in stillness?
My fear goes that I'm not moving, which directly correlates to not moving forward.
Okay. What's your fear when it comes to who you'll become if you're still?
My fear is that I'll go back to my old ways. I'll regress.
Perfect. And what is that?
Not working on myself, not utilizing the tools that I've been given.
Cool. That's the high level. I want to get to the heart. All the way down at the back of this. If I'm still, what will I do?
I'll fail.
And given how hard you've fought to find positive, what was that inflection point? What did you stop doing?
Stop drinking.
And a lot changed since then, yes?
Yeah.
That's where stillness and fear are going to be wrapped side by side.
It hurts my heart. In a good way. Like
I know.
feel it.
I know.
Feel it.
I can see it in your face.
Yeah.
What's important to hear, Leon, though, is that stillness right now and the thoughts that come up in stillness are attached to what it meant to drink. Now, it isn't about the drinking. It's about the numbing of like all these thoughts.
Yeah.
But that's still probably linked to stillness.
Mm.
And yet stillness is the medicine to a comparative mind. But as long as it's linked, you won't go in that door.
I don't think I've ever had somebody put it that way, but that's a whole other thing to sit on. There's that heart tension again.
And that's where your journey lies. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that you like battering ram that door open. But what's important to know is that the reason there's so much fear attached to stillness is because historically it likely was linked to, I will go directly to my solution, which is unhealthy. And now as someone that has gone through that process of sobriety, there's likely a tethering to this happens when I'm still. So I will do the thing that doesn't make me still because they come together.
Mm.
Right? The cigarette de-stresses the smoker. So when they get stressed, they smoke more. Well, it's that link that creates fear. So someone might say, I don't want a stressful job. Why not? Well, because I don't like stress. Or it could be that subconsciously or consciously, they don't want to start smoking again because they know that stress was connected to cigarettes.
Yeah, and probably is what links me back to all the other distractions. I got to find something else because drinking isn't an option anymore. It's not even something that crosses my mind anymore. But there's so many other things that I can easily fall into that basically are addictive tendencies.
And what better place to go than comparison? Because you have an infinite number of options to compare to.
Yeah.
With growth, you have such little option. Growth, you have only your own core values to pay attention to. You don't have the whole world to compare to. You have no vices in that space. But in stillness, you will have to conquer your relationship with the demons, with what is my compulsion here. And all that's changed is that the mystery and the negative feelings that come with drinking is likely been replaced with comparison. That is truly an endless bottle.
That's a deep one.
Here's I want to make sure you get a ray of sunshine, a ray of hope here. The change is a skill. The difference is that while you might have a compulsion to get out of that stillness, it is now well within your control. Whereas before there was a physical element to that.
Yeah.
And stillness, like any muscle, is a practice. So you can begin this practice with just 10 seconds. You can just pause, put your phone down, turn the computer off, or turn and face the window, and just breathe for 10 seconds. And just focus like a meditation on the breathing for 10 seconds. That's it. And you have conquered 10 seconds. And then you can conquer 10 minutes. And then you can conquer an hour. And then you can conquer longer and longer and longer. Like any muscle would, it would grow. But that pathway is a really important one, because that stillness is also presence. When you're present with your kids, you won't worry about what you have or haven't done because you're there. You're not half in, half out.
Yeah.
When you're working on the house, you can work on the house and not do anything else. When you're in the business, you are on the business, not anywhere else. As long as you're 50-50, you're 0-0.
Probably by just that linked with my comparison is what is definitely what keeps me away from fitness, even though I know, like, in terms of fitness, I mean working out, like eating wise, I'm good with, but I always compared myself with fitness to somebody else who's bigger than me, and then now the stillness factor is part of that, because there's a lot of idle time in working out, outside of doing, HIIT workouts and stuff like that. But it's still, to me, in my mind, now that you bring this up, it's a stillness factor, which is what ultimately, pulls me away from it or has me stop doing it.
And I have no doubt that you are capable of conquering stillness the same way you built your sobriety, day by day. You don't go, how do I get to 6 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go, how do I get today?
Yeah.
And it's just today. There's no stillness in the future. There's no stillness in the past. There's just stillness here. And that can become a practice that you build. It will be uncomfortable, but that is a very worthy cause. That's a very noble pursuit to say, hey, I want to work on my stillness. You'd have to set down the mantle of comparison as the agent that solves the, I don't want to be still. Because in stillness, there's probably way more discomfort. Even though comparison sucks, it probably is way less uncomfortable than stillness. That's why 10 seconds might be the only place you can, that's enough.
Even 10 seconds makes my mind hurt right now.
So maybe we start at 5.
Yeah.
And then we go to 6. And then we go to 7. And I want you to notice something. Just by doing this, we've started growth. Let's go 5 seconds. Let's go 6 seconds. Not from a place of I have to, or the world needs to. No. Mm-hmm. We've just identified a growth plate for you.
Yeah.
It's pure. It's not about everything else or everyone else. It's simply about how can Leon become the best version of himself. It doesn't matter what the world is doing as far as stillness. It doesn't matter if someone else is present or not present. The world is irrelevant compared to your stillness. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it pure. That's what makes it growth and not comparison. You don't need to be more present than me. You don't need to be more still than I am. You just have an option to build stillness into your practice.
Yeah.
Into who you are.
I love it. Awareness of stillness.
I'll give you an exercise that has helped me through this. I got a busy mind and a noisy mind too. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that anyone ever sat me down. I've meditated for a long time, but I don't think anyone ever told me what I was actually doing. And this helped my busy mind. You ever play the game Duck Hunt?
Yeah.
All right. Duck Hunt was great. For all my Nintendo fans out there, I love y'all. Duck Hunt, you have a pistol. And as things cross the screen, your job is to take them out. The game, the comparison is, let me get as many of these ducks as I can. Stillness is let the ducks fly. Put the gun down and just watch the screen. So each of those ducks represents a thought. The barking dog represents a thought or your negative self-talk or voice. All you're doing is letting the ducks fly across the screen. You know what? You need to be home this weekend because the kids have a game. Okay, there goes that duck. Don't try to shoot it. Don't try to capture it. Don't try to win it. Just let the duck fly across the screen. You know what? I got to take care of this project at the house. Man, I'm like so behind on the. Okay, there it goes. There goes the duck. And if you can just do that and let the thought cross like a duck in duck hunt, you have essentially practiced stillness. Will you be a master at it? No. But that process helped me a lot. You can think of it like clouds rolling across the sky. The idea is not to attach to the thoughts, AKA pull the gun out and like work really hard to shoot the duck and aim and fire and do all that. We're just watching the duck go across the screen. And that's going to be growth. You and I will be able to chat about this on the next call, but let me kind of round out what I think is important for someone listening and maybe for you. What we talked about was initially not trusting self. And Leon, I think as we look at how do we build evidence to show that we can trust ourselves, the idea of like comparison, it took me a while to find it, but comparison isn't the problem. Comparison is the distraction from the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Took me a while to find that. So thank you for being patient with me. All these tasks and areas where you're not where you are essentially say, I feel uncomfortable being still and being present. And if comparison is the default out of that, then we know that it actually, as a belief structure, is a good thing. And when we assess it, it's like, okay, this is actually the culprit. But in the way that it was, hey, comparison's bad guy, comparison's bad guy. No. Comparison's helping you get away from the discomfort that is stillness, which was probably connected to the drinking in the first place. I don't want to go back to that me, that version of me I didn't like. So I'll find something better. And by flipping that upside down and saying, wait, drinking and stillness are not connected. Let's look at stillness as presence, and let's look at comparison as the means by which to avoid the stillness. We actually have an action item to begin to practice, just that little stillness. And it doesn't matter whether your connection is drinking or not. It doesn't matter whether it's another drug. It doesn't matter if it's anything behavioral. It could just be mental. But we all have these things that force us out of presence. Scarcity is one of them. Any other kind of fear. It could be that we don't know what we would do if we were present. We don't know how to be present versus being unpracticed. I think what is really special about this conversation is that at the core of it, we figured out that it's not about trusting yourself. It's about trusting yourself in stillness. And that gives you a really good roadmap for where to go from here. So homework from this point would essentially be, can you practice stillness in small chunks? Set an alarm for 2 or 3 times a day and just pause for 10 seconds. Where am I right now? What am I doing right now? Can I just breathe right now? Breathe in, breathe out. And just do that. And like duck hunt, let the thoughts fly without trying to win the game or kill the ducks. And what that might start to do is reframe your relationship with stillness, which will then reframe your relationship with comparison. My pattern, largely observed from my father, was if you just keep working, you won't have to be still. And my aversion to still was that I have to face mistakes, flaws, myself, my mind. I have to face all these things. I don't want to face them, so I'll just go be busy. And busy is no different than comparison in the way that they were used. They were both used, you and I both used them as a weapon against stillness, because stillness was wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So where are you at? What's going on?
No, just the bringing of the awareness. Like I said, it's something I had never even connected before, and puts a whole new perspective on everything. It gives me an idea. I've always heard that, the meditation, and they stress it in AA and all that. Meditation. I've never put it together, the fact of stillness being linked back to drinking and not realize. It's just a huge win just in identifying that and being fully aware of it, because this stillness leads me back to every distraction that I have.
As soon as that relationship changes, you'll birth growth.
Awesome. Thank you.
You did good, man. You fought hard. You had a lot of walls up. It was good. Distracted even me. But I think it's really good to have, like, if you were to listen back to this now, you could probably go and notice, like, I'm going to send all this information out so that we don't get to the root of it.
You mean reflect back? Oh, man.
Crazy. And think about what reflection is.
Yeah.
What is reflection?
Stillness.
Reflection is stillness, where you learn the most, where you grow the most.
Yeah. All right. That was great.
You look lighter.
Yeah.
You did good, man. You did good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm sure there will be others that learn a lot from this conversation because you're brave enough to have it. And I'm grateful for that.
I appreciate you having me.
You have mentioned here too that helping others and pouring into others and supporting others is a big part of why you want to own a business. And I think that may have just started here, whether you know it or not. So if someone listening has gone through the transition to sobriety or is in any way called to reach out to you and tell you how much your share here means to them going through their fight to find stillness and presence, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so I have two public accounts. One's on TikTok and one's on Instagram. So they're both investing in life made easy because I wanted to overcomplicate. So I'm trying to make, use my learning tools to make things easier for others. I haven't posted on them in a while, but it's the public forums that I have that you can reach me anytime.
Amazing. Leon, thank you for being here. I appreciate your courage to be out in conversation with me here. And I'm very sure that there will be someone that can resonate with your story and resonate with the fear of stillness. And I'm excited to chat as we go through the coaching program. And now that I know this, I can specifically like curtail some things to you and give you some qualifiers.
Awesome. Thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to do it. If you're listening, tuned in, I appreciate you being here. Let's show Leon some love. Remember to get out of your own way, and we'll see you on the next call.